Hi, welcome back. Let's do a really quick recap of what we have learned about the different energy sources and pathways so far. ATP provides the energy needed to do exercise. The body has different energy sources and pathways to resynthesize ATP. The first one was the immediately available phosphocreatine, which corresponds to our bigger coins. The second one was the anaerobic glycolysis. Our stack of banknotes was exchanged at a poor rate, but it quickly provided ATP. However, your glycogen was used rather inefficiently. Now we have come to the third pathway, the aerobic breakdown, which uses your glycogen much more efficient. Glucose, either derived from the blood or from muscle glycogen, enters again the glycolysis process. But now, in the presence of oxygen, pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA and not lactate. Acetyl-CoA enters the so-called TCA cycle, the 3-carboxylic acid cycle. The TCA cycle breaks down acetyl-CoA and releases compounds which finally, in the so-called oxidative phosphorylation, generates ATP with the means of oxygen. In this way, glycogen can provide 10 times more ATP than in the anaerobic pathway. Aerobic breakdown of glucose has a large capacity. And when used aerobically, your stored glycogen can provide energy for up to 90 minutes of endurance exercise. However, it works at a much lower speed than the phosphocreatine or the anaerobic glycolysis, and its activation will take a few minutes. So our banknotes are exchanged at a good rate now, and we are able to enjoy them for a longer duration. The final energy source is fat, represented by this bar of gold. You can make millions of 1-cent coins from it, but it isn't easy, and it requires some work and time. This pathway we know as the aerobic breakdown of fat, or fat oxidation. Did you know that for fat, no energy can be created without the use of oxygen? Fat is stored as triglycerides in adipose tissue, but also to a small extent in muscle tissue. Fatty acids first have to be released from these stores, and when derived from adipose tissue, have to be transported to the active muscle before they can be used. In the muscle, fatty acids are broken down to acetyl-CoA in a process called beta oxidation. These acetyl-CoAs enter the TCA cycle and oxidative phosphorylation to generate ATP, just like we saw with glucose. Per molecule, fatty acids generate about 4 times more ATP than glucose. Fat is the most energy-dense source of energy, and its stores are huge. Theoretically, you can exercise hours and hours, even days, on this energy source. However, fatty acid molecules require more oxygen for its oxidation than glucose. This finally results in an ATP production speed that is lower than the one for glucose. This makes glucose the preferred energy source during high-intensity endurance exercise, and fat during lower-intensity endurance exercise. Let's summarize what you have learned in this and the previous video. In this table, you can see the energy sources and pathways we discussed and their characteristics. We have seen that ATP is the only energy currency for our body cells, but is available in very small amounts and can only provide energy for 1 to 2 seconds of exercise. These 4 pathways can resynthesize ATP and deliver energy. But due to the differences in speed, delay, and capacity, their contribution to energy expenditure during exercise is different. Phosphocreatine is immediately available and can deliver a lot of energy at once, but only for a limited time, up to 30 seconds, due to its small stores. ATP and phosphocreatine together are called the phosphagen system, or the immediate energy system. And this is the dominant energy system during very high intensity exercise, up to half a minute. Anaerobic glycolysis, the breakdown of muscle glycogen without the use of oxygen, has a small delay and can deliver a lot of energy too, but at a slower speed than phosphocreatine. It will limit itself after a few minutes due to the lactic acid accumulation. The anaerobic system, or short-term energy system, is the dominant energy system for exercise up to 2 minutes, but it still can contribute for a longer time. The final two pathways together are the aerobic system, the long-term energy system, with a slow start. For exercise with a duration of about 2 to 3 minutes and longer, the aerobic system is the dominant energy pathway due to its large capacity. Maybe you didn't realize that. Glucose, derived from glycogen or from the blood, can be broken down aerobically with the use of oxygen. This can deliver a lot of energy at a reasonable speed for up to 90 minutes. Fat is a huge energy store, which can almost endlessly provide energy, but at a lower speed and with a slow start. A final point I want to make is that all energy systems are activated in parallel, as you can see, as soon as you start doing exercise, and not after each other. But some systems do have a delay. They differ in the capacity and in the speed at which they can provide energy. So the intensity and the duration of your exercise determine the preferred or dominant energy source. Knowing this, you are now able to identify which pathways are most important for performance, or for example a powerlifter, a sprinter or a road cyclist.